Russia will be ready to attack NATO by 2030, says the Alliance's Secretary-General Mark Rutte, as he urges member states to ramp up defense spending ahead of the upcoming summit in The Hague. Meanwhile, Moscow has conducted the biggest attack on Ukraine cities so far, only hours before a major prisoner swap. To talk about it all, we're joined by Andreas Umland, Analyst at the Stockholm Centre for Eastern European Studies. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. So nearly 500 drones and 20 missiles attacked Ukrainian cities last night. Now, is this the retaliation for Kiev's Spiders web special operational, or should we expect even more vicious strikes on Putin's side?
There have been large attacks on various Ukrainian cities, including Kiev, where I'm currently, which are comparable to the ones we have seen recently. And this surge is perhaps more related to the increased capabilities of Russia to launch such drones, for instance. And I don't think that these counterstrikes by Ukraine have any escalatory effect. They are now interpreted that way. But I've been here in Kiev when there were large attacks in earlier months before Ukraine had these successes with the Tupolev bombers, destroying strategic bombers in Russia's rear.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now let's talk about Ukrainian counter or sabotage operations deep behind enemy's lines. Now, let's talk about Spiders web. It has proven to be highly effective. So, could we expect more such countermeasures from Kiev, given the damage they can inflict?
Yes, this is obviously now going to repeat. All of this could have been, of course, avoided if Russia would have taken Zelensky's offer to go for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire. Then the attack on the strategic bombers would not have happened. The attack on the Crimea, so-called Crimea Bridge, the Kerch Bridge, would not have happened, and many other similar and perhaps less spectacular attacks would not have happened. The war is now accelerating in that both countries have more and more capabilities to strike the other country in the rear, and Ukraine does that targeting military sites, and Russia does that by simply terrorizing the Ukrainian population and striking the cities, apartment houses, hospitals, universities, and so on.
Let's discuss politics and diplomacy for a while. Now, as we're talking about Ukraine, its accession into NATO seems as distant as ever, but now also the Polish president-elect Karol Nawrocki is questioning Kiev's future EU membership. Now, what do you make of it?
I was dismayed by it. One of the arguments was about the competition in agriculture, but one should remember that Poland itself had these sort of problems when it was acceding in the 1990s and early 2000s to the European Union. There were also West European farmers back then that were afraid of Poland entering the European Union, of the competition on the agricultural market, of labor migration, and so on. But if one remembers, this has been all resolved, and there have been then intermediate solutions for certain transition periods, and that is obviously something that has to also happen with Ukraine. But to give now this signal from Poland is very depressing, of course, for the Ukrainians to hear that from a country that was seen and is still seen by most Ukrainians as a friend of Ukraine.
Well, the next NATO summit in The Hague is just around the corner. Now, what are your expectations from this summit? Mark Rutte stated today in London that the Hague meeting will transform the alliance as we know it now.
I think that can indeed happen because we have already many developments in this direction. in the national states. For instance, in Germany, we have now a new situation with spending on military affairs, with a very fundamental discussion about national security and the future of the German army, that Merz wants to become the strongest army in Europe. And we have also these developments on the European level, on the EU level, and now it's time to take it to the Atlantic, to the Euro-Atlantic level, and that's why indeed I hope so, and it should be a transformative summit for NATO itself, but also for NATO's support for Ukraine.
Talking about defense spending, some NATO members invest in Ukraine's domestic military industry. Now, I'm wondering whether this is also counted as part of the 5% GDP defense investment as demanded by Donald Trump.
Yes, I guess that would be a good calculation, so to say, and I think the countries will have to sort of calculate this, their expenses for security affairs in such a way that indeed to reach the 5%, but that is possible because the nature of warfare is now changing, and there are many non-kinetic aspects that concern national security and that have to be taken care of, and that can have grave consequences for if they are not taken care of, for the national security of states. And one of these ways to increase the security of NATO member states is to invest into the Ukrainian military-industrial complex, thereby helping Ukraine, but also helping the security of their own countries and jointly developing new weapon systems.
Andreas Umland, analyst at the Stockholm Centre for Eastern European Studies, was our guest this evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching, and stay with us for much more news and features here on TVP World.